We could all use a little help navigating the news these days. The Consider This podcast wants to give you a hand. 6 days a week, we'll help you make sense of the day's biggest news story and what it means for you in less than 15 minutes. Listen now to the Consider This podcast from NPR.
Finally today on Sound Ideas, human beings have marked the turning of the year with many different traditions over thousands of years. By some accounts, recognizing the New Year dates back at least to Babylon. Some practices have fallen out of favor, and in this New Year episode of our series McHistory, let's hear about one of them that has apparently morphed into New Year's Eve celebrations from what it used to be, going visiting on New Year's Day.
A happy new year. Welcome the coming, speed the parting year. And in merriment and good feeling, celebrate the day.
McLean County, as a political institution, the county itself, that is, was born, if you will, on Christmas Day, 1830. At that time, the state capital was in Vandalia. Why was the legislature meeting on Christmas Day?
I'm Michaela Label, a volunteer with the McLean County Museum of History.
This is Bill Kemp, librarian, McLean County Museum of History. In 1830, in the decades before the Civil War, Christmas wasn't the major holiday of the season. It was more often New Year's Day. And that tradition will continue after the Civil War.
Beware the snake that lurks within the wine cup, though that cup be offered by women's dainty jeweled hands.
Interesting, somewhat gone and forgotten tradition involving New Year's Day was referred to as calling. And the golden age of New Year's Day calling in Bloomington Normal would be the 1870s and the 1880s. This would be well-to-do or up-and-coming young gentlemen, those in their 20s and 30s, mostly unmarried men. They would call then on their female equals from the upper middle and upper classes.
What is there in this coarse and vulgar custom, this legacy of half-barbaric revelry, which commends it to ladies who would smother with indignation and chagrin if one dared to intimate that they are not intelligent and refined?
These ladies then would hold levees or society parties at their homes. And often a home would accommodate 4 or 5 or more women to be hostesses. Homes would be decorated with arborvitae, ferns, and flowers. There would be food, music sometimes, and certainly conversation. The ideal was to be a very genteel, sophisticated, well-mannered procession.
There are 3 kinds of women on New Year's Day. The excessively ignorant, who insist that a caller is disagreeable unless he gorge himself to the throat with food and then soak the mass in wine or boil it in hot scotch.
Sure, there would be flirting, some romance, a little bit of courtship. That was part of the process or part of the reason for New Year's Day calling.
The vicious and ill-bred class, who do not cram him with the solids, but sop him in all conceivable mixtures of arsenic, alcohol, benzene, and hops, until he is a maudlin beast, fit to be swung in the bucket of a steam dredge, or started home on a dray.
But often by the afternoon or early evenings, as these groups of gentlemen were taking their rounds, they would be taking a nip or 2, or sometimes 3 or 4 from a flask in their pocket, or clandestinely or sometimes openly being offered a glass of sherry or a glass of champagne by a young, attractive lady at one home or another.
And the refined and gentle few, who suspect that friends call to see them, not their kitchens, pantries, and wine cellars, or the corner grocers.
So often by the afternoon or early evening, what was supposed to be a rather genteel, sophisticated, well-mannered event to welcome in the new year would kind of end in a more chaotic and much more rowdy affair. And it was was often the practice of the local press then to excoriate young men for their misbehavior, for giving the community a bad reputation once more.
And who, because gentlemen are enjoyable on such occasions for their brains, do not put an enemy into their mouths to steal their brains away.
But in this case, as we're hearing with this particular article from 1875, women are coming under attack. Women are being blamed, which speaks a lot to the patriarchy, certainly, of the period.
The custom of New Year's calls is recreative and worthy to be preserved, but so long as this vile and debasing usage of offering drinks remains in vogue, it can only result in unhappy returns of the day.
Everything was kind of proscribed, right? There were expectations for appropriate dress and behavior, the hours that you were to be calling on these homes. And young men were supposed to leave a calling card upon entry of the home or upon leaving, usually in the foyer, perhaps in a glass bowl.
Last night at 12, the old two-faced Janus took his last look at 1874.
And some of these calling cards often include more than one name because these gentlemen would travel in packs.
He saw in the old year that had passed much of grief and sorrow, and care and misery and crime, and yet much of real good, of earnest work for the better, of joy and happiness.
Calling cards were often wonderfully, whimsically illustrated with the symbolisms or motifs of the new year. So you, of course, would have Father and Baby New Year, sometimes illustrated. Clocks were common, and also sailing vessels or steamships to represent the exit of the old and the entry of New Year's.
And as he wiped the tears from his retrospective eyes and bade farewell to its changing seasons, turned his other optics with prophetic glance upon the blank curtain that shuts from mortal eyes the drama that humanity is to enact upon the boards of life's theater.